Hey, thank you so much for joining us. Today we're talking about examples of faith in daily life. And what I love about, what I've learned about faith, is that when what you believe, you can actually bring about. So faith has a greater power than we ever thought. I mean, a lot of times we think of it in like a religious sense, but it is actually something that we can create things in our lives because we are actually creators. So join me today. We've got Leslie Householder, and we're going to talk about how you can have faith in daily life so that you can actually get what you want and the life that you like. How is it we can do some amazing and sometimes unexplainable things, like heal our own bodies by the power of our thoughts? Mother's intuition, the law of attraction. Can we really tap into our subconscious mind? Can we really create our own realities? It begs the question, are we novice gods? All right, thanks for joining us. We've got Leslie Householder. We're talking about examples of faith in daily life, how you can use faith to create the kind of life that you want. And I have been amazed discovering more about faith, that it is so much about what we believe about ourselves, what we believe about others, what we believe about the world and the universe around us that actually brings things about. And a lot of times I find myself in the same cycles because what I believe happens and it just kind of keeps me cycled.
It feeds itself.
Yeah. And so now I'm like, okay, well, how can I be deliberate about about my faith and the kind of life I want? So have you experienced this in your life? Have you had examples of faith where you have been intentional and deliberate about what you'd like to believe and the stories you believe in order to bring things about?
Absolutely. And the good news about that is that the more you document or take note of when this happens, and you have that day when you're discouraged and you're like, I don't know if this is going to work for me and whatever, you can go back and remember, okay, I remember all the times that I did this before and it worked, and let that be the loop that you refeed yourself, is remembering those times. And I am confident that every one of us can look back at a time in our life where we did this, maybe didn't realize we were doing this, but if you start searching your memory banks, you'll find evidence that you've done this already and that you can do it again. But one of the most simple examples, and I've kept some notes here just so that I make sure I share some of my favorite ones, is when we were first learning these principles and life was really hard and we were having overdraft fees and we were having late notices and just, you've got this constant evidence that things are not right. Things are not very well. And so one of the first things that I would do to practice this is I would call the bank when I would see another overdraft fee, and I'd be like, oh man, I did it again, and my natural reaction would be frustrated, and then I'd call them, I'd say, can you do something about this? And they'd be like, no, sorry, you've done it too many times or whatever. And I remember being conscious about how I would show up on that call when I was trying to practice this. I would pause. I would imagine myself getting off the phone and saying, honey, we got the fee reversed. Or I would imagine myself hanging up the phone and feeling, oh, I'm so grateful that went so well. And I would see it and I would feel it. And it wasn't easy because I was creating from nothing. I hadn't experienced it yet. I was creating it out of nothing. No evidence, no history, just pure creativity, which we are born with, that is the key to our freedom and abundance and everything. But I would get on the phone and I would pause, feel it, and I wouldn't make that phone call until I had felt it, at least for a moment, how good that's going to feel, choosing to believe that it was going to work out, and making it. So I make the phone call, and what I have seen time and time again is either I get the nice agent, or I get passed along to a different agent who is nicer, or who knows how it all works out. You don't even have to understand or know how it works out. But I noticed that it would change the way I'm showing up. It would change the tone in my voice. It would change the words I choose. It would change the way I react to what they say. Even if they said no first, I would respond with gratitude or politeness or whatever, But I would find that the results more often would come out in my favor if I would do this than if I didn't. And so that's something you can start building evidence from. Another example, And I had this one a lot because I'm a horrible passenger in a car. I've been in a few accidents that have caused me to, tense up if I perceive danger. We'll be driving along the freeway, and if I see on the barrier between the lanes, if I see scuff marks, I think, oh, this is a dangerous spot, and so I'm reacting to evidence that someone else had crashed there. And so what I did to exercise this faith in my daily life in those situations is if someone else was driving and I didn't have control, I would close my eyes and I would imagine myself tucking my kids in bed that night.
Oh.
And I would just escape the moment. I wasn't driving anyway, so I would just close my eyes and imagine the end that I wanted. It's a lot easier than seeing myself not crashing. It's hard to picture not crashing without seeing a crash.
Yeah.
But what does it look like if I am safe? It looks like I got home safe and I'm tucking my kids in and we're peaceful, right? So I would imagine tucking my kids in bed at night, and it would calm me down. And I can't tell you how many times I almost caused crashes by my freaking out, right? And so this kept me calm and it kept us safer. So that's another case.
I like that.
I've used it in when I'm late for a meeting. I'm convinced there is time warps.
Okay.
I am convinced. I'm convinced that the more calm I am, the more time I have in a day. And the more worked up I get, the shorter time is. I can't prove it, but I can tell you over and over and again, when I'm late for a meeting, if I see myself in the meeting, sitting there, looking at the clock and saying, oh my gosh, I actually made it in time and here I am, and be at peace, calm down. And then I go through traffic without fighting traffic. I just hold that vision, hold that image. One of the most bizarre experiences I had, I was doing this, trying to get to a meeting on time. And normally you're thinking about people getting mad at you or calling you out for being late or being embarrassed or, and those are the pictures we're running through our head and creating.
Yeah.
But instead, I imagined having this, and I know how long it takes to get from where I was to this location. And I want to say it's a good 15 minutes. And I think I had I want to say 7. It was impossible to do it, let alone be seated and ready. But I imagined it and believed it. And I thought, you know what? So what if it doesn't work? I'm going to make sure I'm not the limiting factor.
Yeah.
I'm just eliminating that element. It's not going to be my fault if this doesn't go well. And so I get there and I'm in my seat and I look at the clock and I've got 3 minutes to spare. It was... I can't explain it, and my memory of the numbers might be off, but that's how impossible it felt. That's how impossible it felt, and it was. But it worked. And so, have you ever experienced that?
In the opposite. In fact, I was just late to a meeting on Wednesday, and I thought I had plenty of time, and I stressed about the whole thing, and I was there late, I was there tense, and was surprised and I sat down next to my brother. I didn't even know he was going to come to the meeting, but I couldn't believe how fast time went the more I stressed about it. So I'm really interested.
You're going to experiment with it now,
I'm totally going to experiment
and then
with
you're
it.
going to report back.
Absolutely. Now, I got to point out, I got to just pause this for a second here, because Leslie has repeated some themes that come up over and over and over again. And if you haven't paid attention to the whole series or even more videos in the series, she talks about gratitude. Anytime you can deliberately, consciously put yourself into a state of gratitude, it gives you way more options for life. Okay, and there's so much we could talk about gratitude. She's talked about evidences, that you seek evidences, and a lot of times the evidences are the things that we don't want in our lives, because in the past, in our history, it's turned out like this, but we want to create something new, and so we are envisioning creating evidences of future things in our mind. And so anyway, evidences is a big thing. And then the third thing she's talked about that comes up over and over again is creating. We have the power to create. I think we are actually creators. I think we actually have divine DNA within us. And if we can tap into that and really understand we have more control, we can use faith. We can use who we are, our divine identity, to create the kind of lives that we want to live. So I just want to point that out. She's going to tell some more stories. I didn't mean to interrupt, but these themes come up over and over and over again because there's something to them. So, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I think we all know deep down that there is something to it because, like you said, it's in our DNA. And I think we are naturally inclined to have a desire to learn the things that are going to help us become all that we were intended to be. And this is a piece of that.
Yeah.
And so I just love that you can use these on day-to-day challenges that you face. And then as you do, you can recognize it and say, wow, if I can do that with this little thing today, what could I do with my life? I remember the first conscious experiment I did with these principles. One of the first ones, I was setting up home. We had just recently moved, and there was one room that I really wanted this wooden headboard for, big wooden chunky headboard. And we didn't have the money for it. I was not going to spend money on something like that when there were other needs in the family, but it is something that I wanted to make our home feel complete. And so I set the intention and then went about my life. And there was one day, and the intention was, I see it, this is what I envision here. And it didn't really matter to me when or how soon. I just knew that somehow, some way, we were going to find a way for this to happen at the right time. And so what happened was one day I'm going into town, and I get to an intersection where I could either go left or I could go straight, and I would end up in the same place the way the roads were. And so I had a choice. Normally I go straight. Something said turn left. I didn't hear turn left. I just thought, turn left? Well, I haven't for a while, and I turned left. And I come down this hill and up again, and on the side of the road, out for the trash, was this giant wooden chunky headboard and footboard out for the trash. And I was like, it was like just what I had envisioned. I pull over and I go to the door and I knock on the door and I said, are you getting rid of that? She says, yeah, but she was kind of worried probably that the trash people wouldn't pick it up. It was huge. And I'm like, could I have it? And she's like, sure. And I threw my arms around her. I was so grateful, this stranger. And it wasn't because I cared that much about a chunky headboard. I was just floored and thrilled that the principles worked, because coming away from that, I thought, if I can do this with a chunky headboard, what can I do with my life?
Yeah.
And it really got the gears turning. And so I just encourage people to test the principles on the little things and get some experience with it. Try it with something today. Before we're done, I want to make sure I share with you a letter that I received from one of my readers. She wrote me and she said, thank you for what you've been teaching me. I have to share with you an experience that I had. She was walking with her 2.5-year-old daughter, put her in the car, and buckled her up in the back, went to the front seat, got in the car, and was ready to drive away when she heard this huge explosion. And it just, her ears were ringing, and she turned around, and her daughter's hand was blown up.
Oh.
And she didn't know what had happened. She jumped out, and she pulled her daughter out of the car. She took her shirt and wrapped it to try to stop the bleeding. She didn't know what had happened. But her first thought was, that hand is going to need to be amputated. I mean, 2.5-year-old, and it was just obliterated. And but she remembered that she needed to see the outcome she wanted. And so she paused for a moment, and she imagined her daughter's hand well. And she imagined herself holding her daughter's hand and feeling so grateful that it is well. And took the daughter to surgery. What had happened is that a family member had borrowed their car and left a box of things in the back seat, which included a gun. And the daughter had picked up it was in a granola box. And the daughter had found it and had shot her hand, blown a hole in her hand. And when the doctor came out of surgery, and by the way, this mother, when she saw that hand well and whole, and she imagined it, and she felt gratitude for it, she allowed herself to feel a spiritual confirmation that everything was going to be okay. And when the doctor came out of surgery, he told the mom, he said, I hope you believe in miracles, because if you don't, you better start. Because that bullet only barely nicked one bone. It totally obliterated an artery, if there's arteries in the hands, I can't remember, but one of the main blood vessels, but there were enough other blood vessels going to all the fingers that she fully recovered. And her hand is well and whole. She has a scar, but it's a great story.
It's a great story. Wow. I love that.
It's how to use faith in daily life. I think we pray begging for things, all the while picturing what we don't want to happen.
Mm-hmm.
We got to line that up. See what you want and pray for that and be grateful for that as though it is. I think God is ready to bless us more than we allow him to, because we're not seeing it and feeling it. Feeling that gratitude as though we pray in fear. He needs us to have faith.
I sure hope you're paying attention to this. This is awesome stuff. And a couple other things that I want to point out that she's talked about that are repeated themes that come up over and over again. One is choice. Throughout all of this, we have choice. We have the choice to have faith. We have the choice to believe. We have the choice to feel gratitude, to elevate our gratitude levels. The choice to envision things in our lives that we want to have. Then she also talked about stories. And stories often give us the fuel to believe that things are going to happen, in order to create things in our lives, because it's worked for somebody else before, or maybe it's worked for us in the past. We've kept a record of that, and we remember that in order to work on our faith and elevate our faith and our gratitude. And anyway, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you didn't catch the previous episode with Leslie, make sure you catch that. And before we end, I want to make sure that she lets you know how to reach out to her. I took a course from her, which was fantastic. She has books out, she has audios out, she has a lot of great material based on faith to help people deliberately choose faith. So let them know how they can find you.
Find me at rarefaith.org. It's my blog. Rare faith, meaning the kind of faith that causes things to happen. I have a podcast there and some free ebooks.
And it's awesome stuff. Make sure you check that out. Leslie, thank you so much for joining us. And I hope that you join us for more of these episodes. I hope that you look deep inside as to who you really are and realize that you're not stuck. You're not trapped. You can create. You can envision things in your life. You can use the principles that we've taught here to actually be a creator right now to get the kind of life that you'd like to live. What do you think? You've heard our thoughts? Now let's hear yours. In the comment section below, share what impressions came to your mind. What did you get out of this? If you have had thoughts to take action, please do so. Always listen to your inner voice. It's your ultimate guidance system. Of course, the best place to take action is at scottwilhite.com, because if you join me for a free web class, I will reward you by sending you my purpose planner so you can have a physical guide to help you get in touch with your inner guide. What if you are a God in the making? That would mean there's purpose to your life, meaning to your challenges. You have a great work to do. May you have the courage, faith, and power to become who you were truly meant to be. See you next time.